to share some notes on my favorite ways to work on lesson behavior with young students, so ages like 3 to 7 years old. If you don't know who I am, I'm Drake. I was a Suzuki kid and now I'm a Suzuki teacher in Ithaca, New York. I have a studio of 35 students. I teach a wide age range. I think I have some verified tools that I use with me in the studio, and certainly all of which I've picked up from amazing mentors that have come before me. The first thing that's really important to me is that you can't be what you can't see. If we want our children to serve the lesson in a particular way to support the structure of the class, then we have to let them see what that structure looks like. Easiest way to do so is to have them come observe a lesson or observe a group lesson in advance. This can be wrapped up into your intake process as a part of joining the school. I also really like having a lot of videos like this on YouTube so that I can just send links to parents to show their kids, like, hey, look, here's a window into what it looks like to study with Drake. Show children first what it looks like, and that already answers a gazillion questions in their mind about what it looks like for them to show up. I mean, imagine if you'd never before seen what it looks like for somebody to ride a horse or go horseback riding. You just showed up the first day, you see a horse, and then they tell you to start horseback riding. It's so much more helpful to have an image of in your mind of what you're going to do, just like how we have reference recordings for the pieces that we play. You can't be what you can't see. Number 2, this is an idea from Ed Sprunger that we want to invite our students to do as much creative work as they want to inside of a very, very solid container. And we want that container to be as solid, as firm as possible, but also as wide as possible. So we set up reasonable, strong expectations at the limits of what is possible, and then the student can do anything on the inside. There are many classic examples of this for a lesson that I think have just arisen because this principle makes sense. For example, starting and finishing with a bow, having something like a foot chart or a location that they stand on in the room that's just theirs, having a place for students to unpack their instrument, to set their bags, to put their shoes, etc. Also, concept containers or content containers. For example, we only talk about violin things while we're inside of the violin lesson. If you want to share something with me about your day or about something that you're excited about, we're going to do that after we take our final bow or before we take our bow to start the lesson. It's easy to reinforce this one in group class where you already have a class going and you tell a student, I would like for you to step out with your parent and gather yourself, and you can return whenever you're ready to be part of our class again. So they can physically leave the container of the room, sort themselves out, get water, have a bathroom break, have a snuggle with a parent, and then rejoin, come back into the container when they're ready. Number 3, a story really struck me about Navy SEALs. Apparently one of the days that it's most likely for a Navy SEAL in training to quit the program is when they have an undefined workout. So even some of the hardest workout days are still manageable. It's the day where they might have done less volume, but they didn't know how much they were going to do, that many brains are broken, so to speak. For example, if you have to keep running and you don't know how long you have to run, at some point your brain is just going to decide, I don't know the destination, and so I can't fathom getting there and enduring this undefined amount of pain. So, of course, violin lessons are not as painful, I would hope, but defining the end, defining the end point, the goal, the final thing is really helpful. So being reasonable about sticking with your 30-minute, 45-minute, 60-minute lesson, but also inside of that lesson, building out a scaffold of manageable chunks that the student is aware of. So it's not just like we're going to work on scales forever or for an undisclosed amount of time. It's we're going to work on scales, and then we're going to work on review, and then we're going to work on your working piece, and then we're going to do a few previews at the end. That's 4 very clear components of the lesson that the student can monitor moving from one to the next. It's the reason why we have progress bars, right, on our computers when something is loading. We just want to see where we are in the project and know how much longer we have left to wait. We're able to endure or tolerate a certain amount of waiting as long as we know a defined amount of time left to do something. It's also when you're doing repetitions, don't just ask for the student to keep going and going and going until it gets right. Say, I need you to do that 3 times for free where you're not going to get any feedback if they do it 3 times. Okay. let me see, one more just so I can give you feedback. Okay, now I think we need to do 10 rounds of repetition in order to learn that and make it easy. And then they do 10, and then you reevaluate from there. But you don't just say, just keep going, going, going. So a repetition count works, but also like literally a timer, having a timer in the studio can work really well for that. I've used timers, like clock kitchen timers that I have over by my violin. I've also used like a timer on my phone. So, of course, the whole theory there is that because the student doesn't know the indefinite amount of time that they're going to be working on something, that's where they start to use diversion tactics to get out of that pain of doing something that they don't know. So a lot of diversion tactics can be solved just by clearly defining what the project is and what problem we're solving and how many minutes or repetitions they're going to endure in order to solve that problem. I think a lot of other behavior issues in the lesson come from a misunderstanding that the student is on the opposite team of the parents. In reality, the parent is the most important person in the world to that child, and that child will benefit from the parent being really, really clear in their feedback and depositing a lot of positive praise, positive, genuine, truthful praise to that student. We will go to great extents to feel like we look good in the eyes of our parents, and to be able to do something that you don't know how to do, to be able to practice and make mistakes on a violin in front of the most important person in the world. I have a lot of empathy for the child. And so I really like to acknowledge that when I'm in the lesson, that the child is like doing the best that they can to actually look good in the eyes of their parent, and sometimes they're sabotaging on purpose in order to divert attention away from the fact at hand. It's like, okay, if I don't play in tune, then my mom will think less of me, or that will sever our love, or something like that. Clear feedback tools on what is and is not lesson behavior or class behavior. Right, so if a student is rolling around on the floor, I ask them, is rolling around on the floor lesson behavior or non-lesson behavior? What would you do if I started rolling around on the floor? Or what would you do if I just walked out of the room? Or what would you do if I went and crawled under the desk? Would that be lesson behavior? No. So we define it. And then this is a strategy I learned from Dinah Staggs. I will either use an abacus bead counter, or I'll use just simply coins. And I'll say, every time you demonstrate lesson behavior, I'll put a quarter down. Every time you demonstrate non-lesson behavior, I'm going to put a penny down. And when we get to 3 non-lesson behaviors, our lesson is finished. That can be a really clear feedback mechanism of me showing them, I do not agree with the action that you just chose in the lesson. Last one, this one I picked up from Charles Crickbaum, and it has changed my teaching and thinking a lot. It's simply the phrase, it is my job as your teacher to show you how to take a lesson. It is my job as your teacher to teach you how to take a lesson. It's my responsibility. So if the student misunderstands how to behave in the lesson, it's because I have not done them the service of teaching them how to. This applies just as much in group class as it does in private lessons, and it's really important to make sure parents know that too. Right? It's not that the student is misbehaving, it's that I haven't taught them what a lesson looks like, feels like, or what sort of actions you demonstrate in a lesson. I feel like that's a great intervention statement. It's really easy to just come in and say that and say like, there must have been a misunderstanding, I'm so sorry, let me explain to you what we do in this situation. So hopefully you can keep that little phrase in your back pocket. It reminds me of something Alex Hormozy says, which is, wherever the blame is pointing, that's who gets the power. If you point the blame to the student that they're not behaving, then they get the power in the lesson. If you point the blame at yourself and you take the fall and own up to the mistake that you've made not to clarify what a lesson looks like and teach them and help them learn what a lesson looks like, then you're just giving away power. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.